I always say crabbing's like the gateway drug that gets people to the water, you know? It's very approachable, affordable. You don't have to be wealthy, you don't have to have a boat, and it's a way for you to access this resource.
This is Life's Tough, Explorers Are Tougher, and I'm your host, Richard Weiss. Scratch the surface of an explorer and you'll find an adventure and a great story. This show is about their tales. This podcast is a proud supporter of the Explorers Club and the EC50 initiative, 50 people changing the world that the world needs to know about. For more information, go to explorers.org. Today's question: where do explorers come from? As a kid, I imagined they were raised in yurts or mountain villages tucked away in the Swiss Alps. I grew up on Long Island, which is probably best known for bad accents like coffee and I'm scared of you and gold chains. But exploration doesn't always begin on a mountaintop or in a yurt. Sometimes it begins when you return home. Our guest, Tia Clark, grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, rooted in indigenous ancestry and the crabbing culture of the Gullah Geechee coast. Searching for healing and meaning, she found both in the waters of her youth. Today, through casual crabbing with Tia, she reconnects people to nature, to culture, and to themselves. She's also an EC50 honoree of the Explorers Club, one of 50 people changing the world that the world needs to know about. And yes, she can teach you a lot about crabs, but also maybe a little about joy. Hi, Tia.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Tia, when I said that, you imagine that explorers grow up elsewhere. And I grew up on Long Island. You grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. When you were a kid, or even, I know you worked at a bar called The Mill, and someone would have said to you, hey, Tia, you're going to be one of 50 people changing the world. What would you have said to them?
Honestly, my answer would have been, where did you park your spaceship? And you're cut off because you probably had too much to drink. Never a day in my life would I ever believe that I would be listed among world explorers, and definitely not one of 50 people changing the world needs to know about. I honestly didn't think I really had that much to offer besides being a barmaid for my community.
So how did you get from being a barmaid to being, I guess the first sensation you had was crabbing with Tia, which was on Airbnb as listed. And I know from friends that it's something that went viral and you probably got way more people wanting that experience than you expected.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it all started with my health. I mean, I was in food and beverage, but a lot of people know that food and beverage industry can be really hard on you. And I smoked cigarettes, I drank alcohol. I really, honestly, I didn't care. I didn't care about my health. I didn't care about myself. And, it kind of showed with what I was projecting to the world. And I just had walls up, honestly, to keep everybody out. One day, I just got fed up with the way that I was living. As a smoker, I was spending money on like Nicorette gum and the patches, and none of that stuff was working. And one day, I just was having a casual conversation with someone. And I realized that I'd been smoking. My birthday would have made 20 years of smoking. And I said, that's it. And I just decided to quit. And I thought, I'm doing this and I'm like so excited about it. You think your health is so bad and you're going to make what for a fact is going to be a good switch for your health. So you're expecting to feel better. And within 3 months of quitting smoking, my health declined in a way that I'd never experienced. And it was miserable to just be awake every day. I was covered in hives. My limbs were completely inflamed. My hands would swell so I couldn't close them. And I had to work. That experience of going through that sent me to the hospital. If you go to the hospital and you're covered in hives, they're going to give you steroids. That's what they're going to do. And they did that the first 2 times. And then the third time they said, we couldn't give you any more. And this was all within 2 weeks. And when they said they couldn't give me any more, I kind of freaked out. I really did, because I had to go to work. Like, I was working 4 days behind the bar and I was making more money at the time than anyone in my household. So regardless if I had hives or swollen limbs, I had to go to work. And so I really didn't know what to do. They sent me for the national allergy. National allergy sent me to a holistic woman. And finally, this person that all I know about them is that they aren't a doctor. Like I've been to doctors, nobody can help me. They sent me to this person, and one thing I know is they are not a doctor, but I just wanted to go talk to them. She put me on an elimination diet and everything stopped. The hives, the inflammation, everything kind of just came to a halt. I could breathe again. And so I started following what she suggested religiously. I followed it without any breaks. And after 3 days, everything stopped. And I did it for 3 months. And I lost over 50 pounds in 3 months and revealed from my blood work that I was premenopausal at 37. She thought I had an autoimmune thing. She really wasn't sure, but she just wanted me to try this thing. And I did. Well, when I went back for my 3 month checkup, she was blown away. Like I was a new person sitting in front of her. And she was like, "You're doing excellent. Now try to get active. Go find a way to get active." For me, I was like, I'm not going to the gym. Like at the time, that's what I thought. Because when she put me on that elimination diet, I weighed well over 300 pounds. My waist of my pants was 49 inches. And within 3 months, I immediately lost 50 pounds. So this woman is like, oh my God. She's like, "You're doing incredible. Just get active."
So who was she? I
Well,
mean, you know,
she was a nurse practitioner. Her name was Jean Blake. And that story is really funny because the woman at National Allergy suggested that I see her friend, who's Jean Blake, who was a holistic woman. And those two ladies, Erin Copenhaver and Jean Blake, are the two people that helped me get my health back online. Since they've helped me, they both have left the places that they've been working and they've started their own now online telehealth private practice. But those two women are the ones that kind of helped me get my health in order. But once that started happening, I needed a way to get active and I didn't want to go to the gym. So one of my cousins took me crabbing for the first time. And I grew up eating crabs my entire life. And I tell all of my guests that come on the dock that the Gullah Geechee culture is a water culture. And crabbing goes as far back as enslaved days when they were given rations, they weren't given enough to feed their families. So being able to go to the edge of the water and throw a cast net and catch shrimp and fish and crab, it was a way to feed your family. So I knew crabs and crabbing from eating. And another thing is in my family, it was like a rite of passage. Like in order to be able to get to that table, to pick those crabs. But until you were old enough, you were hand fed crab, shrimp, fish by all your other family members that knew how to eat it. If I had known what I know now, I would have just played dumb and just let them continue to feed me. But there was still just that wanting to get up there with your big cousins and be able to pick your own crab meat kind of thing. But the shells are sharp and they'll cut you. So as a kid, they don't want you to slice your hands. They don't want you to waste the meat that they just spent their hard-earned money on. So I knew so much about eating crabs. The first day I went crabbing was like somebody cracked my skull open. I felt duped. I did. I felt duped because everybody I take crab and they see this crab and they're like, "Oh my God," and they're so excited. The first crab that ever was pulled out of the water and on the dock with me, I looked at my cousin and I just thought, why is that crab here? I was like, what is that crab doing here? And it was just this, how could I not know those crabs were in this water? Because it was such a big deal for us to get it that I didn't realize that it was so easy. So I left there with like this thrill of being connected to this ingredient that I knew, but also I had a ton of questions. I called my mom. I was like, why haven't I been crabbing? Why have you never taken me crabbing? All my aunties, my sister, I wanted to know. And then I found out it's cultural. Everyone gave me the same answer in different ways. Well, your cousins and uncles used to go. When they would come with a good haul, we would gather everybody and then we would cook it all and we would all eat. So I'm like, so the guys went to the water. They were the hunter gatherers. You guys were here. You were preparing it and bringing the family together. I get it. But I still was like, I'm not letting them have all the fun. I'm going back out there because it just made me feel alive. It really did. It was for the first time that I felt like I was so excited to get up every day just for the chance to go near the water. Like a lot of pride in thinking that I knew my hometown. And then that day I went crabbing, I was like, I don't even know Charleston. I was like, I don't even know if the sky's blue anymore. It's just this sinking feeling on me.
Our mission is to empower the next generation of explorers. If you like this podcast, please recommend it to a friend and have them join the expedition. So you're still working at a bar at that point. You've gone out
Oh,
crabbing,
absolutely.
still working at a bar, but I got to imagine as you started your statement, a bar is not a healthy place to be. There's still a lot of alcohol around you, and even people are hanging out at the bar. I mean, I
Yeah.
hate to cast dispersions on it, but it seems like whenever you see people at bars, they're medicating themselves for
Yeah.
various reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's absolutely right. And for me, it became an easy decision. It was a hard decision, but an easy decision. When I fell in love with the water, I went crabbing every day. I didn't know a lot about the water. What's funny is it was more about the cast net. During that year, I had about a year and a half of me on the water without sharing it with other people. Because you're right, that bar that I worked in, the particular last bar that I was in, didn't have any real windows. And so it was like I was putting myself in this hole every day with people that may sometimes people go to drink for joy. A lot of times it's for misery. It's hand in hand. You just never know when that door opens. But that environment started being so negative for me. It was because I was going to the water every day for 2 hours to throw a cast net. It was my way of being active. And the one thing about the cast net is you never know what you're going to pull up in that net. And so I would throw this net. And then when I pull it up, here's this thing. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. So I take a picture of it and I post on social media. What is this? And then customers from the bar, other friends that were longtime fishermen, biologists would see my posts and they would go, oh, that's this. This is what that species is. So I would learn while I'm sharing this journey. So everybody's kind of learning with me. It's not like I'm doing this and trying to teach people stuff. I'm doing this and going, did y'all know this was in the water here? Did you know we had spider crabs here? Did you know sea turtles will come this close inland? It's like just this world of like discovery on the water for me. But it was so joyful and it made me so happy every day. But I had to go to the bar at night. So here's this wake up in the morning, I have this joy, and then I go into the bar. And the more I would go to the water, the less time I could even take standing in that building. And it really kind of broke for me because this one day I just pulled up and I was ready to get out of the truck and I just sat there and I sobbed so hard outside of that bar for 20 minutes. And I had to just muster up the energy to go inside, but I was just sitting there like sobbing, like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is awful. And every time I walk in, it would feel like somebody's hit me in the face or something. Like within 5 minutes, something would happen that I'm like, this is your fault. You drove yourself here. You put yourself in this environment. You're expecting something different. And at the time I was married and I went home and expressed just what was happening. And at the time my wife was like, quit. And I was like, I can't quit. This is how we eat. And for me, it was the first time I ever had somebody just show me like true full support. She was willing to throw away the way that she comfortably lived her life and we ate just for me to be happy. And I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. It took me a while. It took me from November 2018 to May of 2019. But I decided I was going to take a chance on myself. And so I quit the job and formed a team, and Casual Crabbing with Tia went full time. But that's because of all the other people around me. I would have never even signed up for Airbnb experiences if it hadn't been for my ex-wife. And within 2 weeks of the pitch that she put out, I got chosen as a experience. It was one of the first 13 here in Charleston. And then within 3 months on their platform, it got ranked as one of the top 4 in the world.
That's an
And
amazing story. And I have to imagine the secret to learning is if you like something, you tend to learn more of it because it's pleasurable, right? And so at what point do you say to yourself, I'm becoming kind of an expert on the waters around Charleston? I know there's always still a lot to learn, but at
yeah,
some point people are looking at you as the expert.
yeah, that happened honestly as the more and more I hosted. And I realized like just how much more confident I became in sharing everything that I was learning. When I knew like I'm sharing this information, I know that it is true. And it's not like I'm just blowing smoke up these people's butt. Like I'm actually teaching them things. I am supplying them with tools that they can go use in their own lives, wherever they live, go support their waterways wherever they live. And that's when I started realizing it. I realized that I could answer pretty much any question with confidence because I was so nervous. the first time I ever took anybody crabbing, I didn't want to take people. Okay. And then one of my old food and beverage friends and patron of the bar that I was at was like, "Dear, take my brothers. They're coming. They're visiting. Take my brothers. I just want to go with my brothers. I don't care if we catch anything. Just let us go do this with you." And I was like, no, no, no. And then finally I said yes. Well, that day, his brothers all showed up with their own fishing poles, all their own stuff. And I was just like, these guys know more than me. I should not be hosting this experience, you know? But then one of those guys was in tears on that dock. And I realized this doesn't matter what I know. It matters that I'm providing this space and this environment for these people to come together with their family, their friends. I mean, I could literally write a book about all of the different types of people that I have hosted on the docks and the ways that people utilize what I am providing. You know, most people think it's just coming crabbing. No, I've had a group of 16 people that are going on an end of life celebration. They had a family that had a family member that had a terminal illness, and they all, for 1 month, got in RVs and they all drove together, and they wanted this to be an experience that they had. You know, like Charleston is a food hub. I know how special it is, the access that we have to go and catch our food and cook it. Well, I have people, a couple that has visited Charleston for, this will be their 5th year in a row. They're the only people that I know that come to Charleston on vacation and never go eat out in a restaurant. They come crabbing with me, they harvest their garden, and they stay where they are for a week, and they get fresh ingredients so that they can cook it for themselves. And people are starved for this experience that we get, and sometimes people take for granted here. My experience, I literally try to make sure everybody's head gets cracked open like mine, you know?
You say that people come from different walks of life, different reasons for coming there, but clearly there's something you're doing, the waters are doing, that are connecting them to an experience. Well, some of them were expecting, not expecting. What does it say about what's missing in people's lives?
It's the noise of the outside world. So when you come on the dock with me, I make you put your phone in the dry bag. They're on their phones. You know, they're on, my team and I, we take all the pictures. Put it down. Because what I've learned is the water is a powerful healing place. You don't have to touch it. You can just stand next to it. But when you have all this noise and all this worry and everything there, you don't really kind of let it take over you. I find that if you get people out there, and number one, you take the phones away so other people can't reach them to interrupt them from what's happening. And they don't have any bubbles coming on their phone to remind them of things. Like, you just focused on what you're doing right there and being present. You know, and I mean, some people say to me, they're like, "No, Tia, it's you." I'm just helping them get in this space. I don't have a magic wand. I know that.
Well, you kind of do, Tia. I mean, you kind of do. No, you and I spoke about this offline, that there's a journey that people take, and you're never quite sure of that journey or if you're on the right journey. But it seems that all the things that occurred in your childhood culturally, maybe seeing, I don't want to say the worst aspect of life, but a dark side of life inside of a bar, led you to the light and to really the full enthusiasm of it. Because I think if you got an old-time crabber who's been doing it his whole life, it becomes work for them too at some point. It seems like there was sort of a magic sauce to it all.
Yeah, it is. And I think maybe it's just that intro. I always say crabbing's like the gateway drug that gets people to the water, you know? It's very approachable, affordable. You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to have a boat. And it's a way for you to access this resource, you know?
And your resource sort of management then led you to oysters then next, right? It's sort of like, it seems like it's still on a path.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Well, without a college degree, I was working behind that bar, making more money than anyone in my household. So I thought, there's no way. When I came back from Airbnb in San Francisco, the headquarters, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're going to quit your job. You're going to do this." And all I could think was, there's no way I'm quitting my job. I was like, there's no way. Everything's already invented in this world. And also, how can I just go to the water and take crabs? That won't last. And that's before I knew anything about conservation. That is literally just my mom telling me, whatever I do in life, there needs to be a balance. That's all I knew. And so I wasn't sure, which is another holdup of why I waited so long to actually leave the bar to do it. after that huge nod from Airbnb is because I didn't know how it was going to work. And then I realized if I want a crab, if I really want to do this, I have to make sure there's a way for crabs to thrive because by me running the business, I'm putting pressure on them, you know? And so that led me to making sure that everyone 16 and up that comes with me purchases a recreational saltwater license. Last year, I think my business generated over $200,000 for the department just from people coming crabbing. I don't get any of that. That just goes to the resource, you know? And in the Gullah Geechee culture, they say, you been ya or you come ya. Been ya is a native, come ya is a visitors. And honestly, what I said when people said you should do this as a business, I said, why would I let all these come yas just come take something out of our waters? That's what I thought. Now I realize that those communers are helping our waters because of the money from the licensing. I host a monthly volunteer event where we build artificial oyster reefs and then deploy them along our shoreline because oysters filter our water. They build a habitat for crabs and other marine life, and it protects our shoreline and grassline from erosion. And when I realized that the more and more I hosted this experience, the more and more I would be helping that, I was like, okay, I can do this, you know? And the more that I learned about oyster recycling, the more I felt like it was my duty, honestly. And I got to be honest, when I came back from the annual dinner, I was
We're talking about the Explorers Club annual dinner.
Explorers Club annual dinner. I felt very, very inspired because as much as I got from that, I learned so much. I remember you coming up and introducing me to a guy that was working on oyster restoration in Hong Kong. And I was like,
I do remember that.
And I was like, and he was talking about how they need shell. And I was like, so you guys need shell in Hong Kong. We need shell where we're working. They need shell for the Billion Oyster Project. They need shell in the Chesapeake. We have to purchase shell sometime because of the lack of us getting it, but it's still optional. People are throwing away so much oyster shell here. And so that's when I came back and I was like, okay, I already called a meeting with the head of the oyster recycling program at DNR, and I met with them last week to talk about possibly being the champion for this cause and trying to figure out how to really spread oyster restoration throughout our state. Wondering if we can get a ban on it going into the landfill, because I know that there's one in Virginia right now, and that could be a start. But also being in food and beverage in the restaurants, these people will recycle their shell, but they're not if you're going to charge them to do it. They're not if it's going to be a bunch of logistics, hoops that they have to jump through. So now I'm considering partnering with, or maybe hopefully starting a nonprofit that will just focus on collecting and monitoring that shell so that we can potentially incentivize people or maybe give them some kind of credentials that they can market for their business. And I wouldn't have until after I came to New York and came to the annual dinner.
Well, it's interesting with that. I don't want to digress too much from you, but I always felt that when you got people with similar interests, exploration for one, you start talking about what you do. I guess the question I have for you is, at this point in your life, I mean, you're on a great trajectory and there'll be some bumps in the road, but do you feel that everything is possible?
Yes and no. I feel like this could be like legacy making. I feel like it could be possible. I don't know if it's possible in my lifetime. It would be great if it is, but I feel like there's so much potential and that there is a chance for this that maybe I could start it and maybe somebody could even pick it up afterwards. If not, I feel like this is the beginning of something that needs to happen. Probably should have happened in the past. Glad it waited for me. I do feel like it's possible. I do. The proof's in the pudding, and really there just needs to be a big buy-in from a lot of different people in order for this to be made a reality.
Tia, do you ever feel like you have imposter syndrome? I've spoken to a lot of people who aren't classically trained. Like, you do not have a PhD, but yet as you speak to me, I am understanding holistically the food industry, the crabbing industry down in Charleston better than I would with somebody who never left their university.
Yeah, I have imposter syndrome a lot. I mean, I think that is what I fight the most. I have a couple of, mentors. I don't know if they know that they're my mentors, but there are a couple of women business owners that I really look up to in the community. And I just remember telling them and speaking to them because they'll invite me to coffee. And I'm like, when does this go away? I wake up sometimes and feel like I'm running this business into the ground. And one woman goes, "Oh, you're doing it right. I feel that way all the time." And she's one of the most successful businesswomen that I know. Is it ever going to go away? Does it stay there? Does it just mean that I care? Like, I don't know, but that is my battle. I am always trying to convince myself that I belong, even though I don't have those accolades that I do. I belong in this room and that my voice is just as strong and powerful as somebody else that does. And I tell you, Richard, the Explorers Club annual dinner and the space that y'all held for us for EC50 was so special for me, and it meant a lot. And I tried to tell other people there just how important it was to hold that space. We get nominated for these things, and sometimes I may not even know that you're being nominated for maybe some of the EC50. But when I found out that I was like in the finalist for it and all these things, I was like, cool, what is that? Like just like, what really is it? But then when I came there and was in that space, I got a clear understanding of what it was. It made me really feel like I belonged with those people. You can do Zooms and have Zooms, but I'm sitting there with NASA scientists on the Zoom and I'm still swirling in my head, where's my place in this? And then I get there and I get in the space and I realize my voice belongs in this room. I completely understand what you guys are trying to do by putting all these different people together. And it was just a really powerful thing for me.
You're going to make me cry.
I don't mean to.
No, we put these together and, you're in the 5th class of us doing this. I kid you not, probably the most joyous day of the year for me is when we do announce to the 50 people who have going to be honored, and we get you all on a Zoom call. And, generally about 40 of you show up. And everybody's so fascinated with each other, and there's this sense of community right off the bat. You have probably just said it in as beautiful a way as I've ever heard it described.
It's amazing. Just like it built my confidence, like just being in that space. And for me, being a Black woman and coming from where I came from, like, I belong. I don't know. That's why I wanted to tell other people, because I'm like, I don't know if you guys know how powerful that was for us. And then I'm talking to the other people and they're like, yeah, I'm super nervous. And I'm like, you're nervous? Like, I'm nervous to be standing next to you. What are you nervous for, But when I got into the club, I actually sat on the news and didn't go public with it. Just when I got accepted as a member, because I wasn't quite still sure what the fit was, And one of the women from the Visitors Bureau here was like, can I put you up to be interviewed for this? And I was like, absolutely not. I said no, because I wasn't quite sure. But now I feel comfortable talking to anyone about the club, about EC50, about what I think my role is there in the future of the club. But I don't know if I would have been able to done that unless I came to that space.
That's terrific. And, I think too, you're talking about your trajectory too. And I know you still speak to people at the mill or people who are in similar situations. What's the piece of advice that you give people to sort of have them overcome sort of where they are in life?
To lean, excuse my French, to lean into the scary shit. Whatever scares you, makes your hands shake, and makes you think you need to run the other way, lean into it. Because that is where I feel the most alive. That's where I have grown the most. We all try to build these routines and make this comfortable place for us to be. But then you just sustain in that space. And that's it. And there's so much more out there. So I tell people to challenge themselves and do all the things that make you nervous. If your heart starts beating fast, your hands start trembling, your lips quivering, that's the thing for you.
Tia, you're amazing. And I feel really a debt of gratitude to have met you, to hear your story. And, we started this conversation with the whole idea of 50 people who are changing the world that the world needs to know about. And I think your message is so powerful and so strong. And whatever the instincts you're following right now, continue to follow them, because you are a magnificent representative, not only the Explorers Club, but what a human should be. Tia, thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Seriously.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast. Now we have a little favor to ask. We'd really appreciate your support, so make sure to leave us a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss another episode. See you out on the trail.